Hello everybody, welcome to the stream. This is the first time I've ever done this before, so thanks for tuning in. So the whole point in this hour is I'm going to basically go through one of the songs from Colours in the Sun on the guitar, and we're going to kind of do a back and forth, and I'll kind of show you a few bits and pieces about how we write music, and obviously if you guys have any questions, feel free to just ask them in the chat. So what we're going to start with is we're going to just go from the top. We're going to start with Colours. A couple of things I'll show you guys is firstly the patch that I'm using. So with Voyager we actually have pretty simple patches. We're running a Line 6 Helix Stomp, which is the compact Line 6. And we're using Stomp mode on it, and we've got a separate MIDI controller that changes the patches. So, on this patch, this is the only one that I use in this song. It's literally just an amp, a cab sim when we're running DI, and a pitch shifter, which is a stomp box that I can turn on and off. Kind of like this, if you can see that kind of switching on and off. The amp we're using is at least I'm using the Line 6 Badonk. And these are the settings. Apart from that, there's really nothing particularly interesting about this patch. So, just let me know in the chat if you can hear my guitar. If you can hear that, just let me know in the chat. The idea is I want to try and get the level of the guitar matching where the song will be. Currently the guitar should be pretty much like a lot louder than where the music is at. Alright, so what I'll do first is I'll just play through the song beginning to end, and then we'll kind of start pulling it apart. The wonderful Ashley Ducourt has supplied these tabs. We went through and wrote out all of the tablature, and then Ash went and formatted it for us, and it looks rather beautiful. So we're going to be using this tab book. Eventually this will be available online, and if there's enough interest, we'll get some physical copies done as well. A little bit louder. Okay. Give me a sec. This is obviously, because it's the first time I've ever done this, there's going to be a little bit of a couple of little weaning problems with levels and stuff, so give me a moment. Just let me know if this is better. If that's around the same volume as my voice, that's what I'm after. Everyone wants more volume. Beautiful. Okay, cool. Now, here's the next step that I need you guys to do for me, is to tell me whether the track is now loud enough. Is the track around the same volume as the guitar and the voice? Alright, I'm going to take one yep as a confirmation. So let's just jump in and play the tune beginning to end. Too loud. Okay. No, it sounds fine. Cool. I'll pull it back just a smidge. Alright, let's give it a go. Having the track louder than myself means you can... My crap playing will be buried. Okay, so let's give it a play. Alrighty. Cool. Yeah, I have a bad habit of doing the old eyebrow raise when I'm playing. Can I do disconnected? Well, the idea with this hour is that every week I'm going to come back and do the next track of the record, so we will eventually get there. Track is slightly too loud. Make sure to mute and send voice make. Oh yeah, okay, no problems. We'll do. Yeah. Thank you for the Thank you for all of the feedback on the audio. I'm gonna try and get this sorted over the coming weeks. Hopefully, it's a little clearer for you guys. Okay, so what we have at the very beginning of the track is basically just like a chorus, right at the very beginning. This is all done in octaves. Now, with this tune, the guitar is actually the guitar is tuned in drop A. So we've got a B standard, and the the B string is tuned down to an A. So it's similar to like drop D if you're on a 6-string guitar. So we have A, E, D, G, B, and E. If you want to, and you don't have a 7-string, but you want to give this tune a play, you should be able to play everything on a 6-string if you tune it without the top E string, because I don't think we use that at all in this track. So that's just another alternative if you don't have access to a 7-string. Who is the author of the main riff in Saccharine Dream? I'm not sure which one is the main riff. I guess it's that like... If it's that one, I wrote that. That's actually the riff that kind of started that tune off. Oh, actually, no. No, I wrote that for something else, and then I think later on we decided to use that riff for this song. So I think it was actually injected into the track later. I think Danny had like a chorus and some ideas, and we kind of like took some older ideas, that riff included. Next riff. Oh, the... that one? We're getting sidetracked already. I'm supposed to be stuck into this one song, but you guys are asking questions about other songs. I'm going to try and bring myself back to colors. I have ADD, so I have a bad habit of getting really distracted by things. So this whole opening part is done in octaves. The annoying thing about this, and the annoying thing about guitars generally, is that it's very hard to get the guitar to behave itself and stay in tune. So when you're playing this part, you want to be really careful about how you tune the guitar. You want to tune to how hard you're hitting. And you're looking for the like initial strike of the strings to be in tune. It can be very difficult to maintain that tuning throughout, but that's just one thing to be aware of when dealing with these octaves. It's really, really difficult to get them to stay in tune. There's probably a little bit of wavering in there from myself as well. The chorus is really, really straightforward. It's basically just a bunch of 8th note runs, going from 3rd fret to 6 to 4 to 8 to 6 to 8 to 9. So it's just kind of like, it's basically just going up a, I guess it would be like a Phrygian. With this weird 8th fret note in there as well. That's sort of where the key changes. J Feather, this is a Mayonnaise Duvel Elite 7. I've been working with Mayonnaise for a couple of years now, and I love this guitar, man. It's just really, really... It's just a masterfully crafted instrument. It's got a mahogany body, maple cap, Wenge and Babinga neck and a ebony fingerboard. And it actually has loom inlays on the side as well. So when it is pitch black on stage, I can see what I'm doing. So the chorus is pretty straightforward. I don't want to really hover too much over that section because it's really, really simple. Verse 1, this is where we kind of do some of our typical syncopated stuff. Right? So you can break this rhythm down into chunks. Rather than thinking about the whole section, you can see it as more like, I guess if we were to break it down, it is 2 repeats of this rhythm. Right? And then it just repeats again. So you can either break it down into a 3-beat phrase done twice, or you can think of it as the full 6 beats if you really want to. Right? And then, so that's sort of like your first section. Then you just have da 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 right at the end. I might make stupid voice sounds with my mouth rather than with my guitar. Right? If I were to just chug that on the one note the whole time. Right? And then we just repeat that. It's that same deal with the second half. But right at the end of the phrase, we decide to syncopate the last 3 notes. Right? So this is just to make it harder for ourselves, basically. We like to take a base idea and then work in more complications. I guess we don't do that with the intention of deliberately making it hard. We just get bored very easily, and it's something that we like to do compositionally to kind of throw some extra ideas in there. If we have a different rhythm that we're hearing, it's pretty boring to just sit on that same rhythm the whole time. So it's just nice to kind of break it up with something that's a little bit different. And that same figure basically covers most of the verse. One thing I wanted to add was just this little over the bar thing. I can't remember exactly what inspired me to do that, but I just heard in my head like this idea of like the note kind of dragging over to the next bar. Kind of like that. So it just drags and then kicks back in. I remember spending a lot of time trying to work out exactly where the next note would land. But when you spend enough time with a metronome and being a nerd, you can eventually work that out. Does that mean your apartment smells of rich mahogany? Yes. Yes, it does. Everything smells like rich mahogany. I'm unfortunately not Ron Swanson though. I need more of a mo. Do you have any plans to visit Russia? We have actually. We've we've come very close multiple times, but things fall through, and obviously with all the stuff that's going on at the moment, pretty much every gig has fallen through for everyone. So, favorite part of the drums that keeps you in time. Actually, I've been really partial to the kick lately. I guess that's probably because of sections like this, where it's really very syncopated, and a lot of what we do follows the kick drum. Like Ash's kick drum is basically playing this exact same rhythm with just a chicka 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 in the hi-hats. So yeah, I tend to find myself gravitating towards the kick, and sometimes if I can, I'll get some kick drum in my fallback as well, so it's clearer. These tabs available for download. They will be eventually. Me and Ash are kind of talking about how we want to release them. So yeah, they will be available as a PDF and hopefully as a physical copy if there's enough interest. One thing about this, and this might be getting into real nerdy guitar territory, but I guess that's the point. With this palm muted section, you want to be really, really tight with your palm mutes. I tend to actually, in this section, move my wrist a little further up the bridge so that it really chokes the notes off. Right, compared to... I want that real like machine gun kind of sound, so I tend to move my wrist just a smidge up from where I would normally. And the other thing as well is that you want to get that left hand muting between notes as well. It's very minor. In fact, you probably can't even see it from the camera, but I'm just lifting my finger off the fret when I can between notes. It's not coming off the string, it's just coming off the fret. So it's a very minute little change in tension. I'm not sure if you can see that on the camera, but it's just a tiny little change in the amount of pressure I'm applying to the string. And you want to try and put that between every 8th note as well as the 16th note rests. And that's what's going to give you that real like machine gun, like tight palm mute sound. One thing I should mention is that the patch that I'm using has a pretty, well, it's not like a really gnarly gate, but there is a gate on there, so you have to be careful with that too. Try and get the sensitivity to sit right. And then right at the very end of the verse, we just have a slight change in the note choice. So just it kind of goes into this weird like whole tone. Yeah, whole tone scale. It's kind of a strange thing where everything is a tone apart, or for a pure guitarist point of view, 2 frets apart. So you've got 3, 5, 7, 9, 11. It's kind of, if you do it like ultra fast as arpeggios, it kind of sounds like that weird spooky dream sequence stuff that you hear in like what's behind the square window, you know, that kind of shit. Gent secrets. Well, yeah, I mean it's really just aggressive with the right hand and just sort of like moving your wrist like 2 mil up the strings, and that's going to give you that real firm, aggressive sound. Firm palm mutes. My son asked me to forward you that you're a pretty cool band. Oh, thank you. I think we're actually a bunch of nerds, but someone thinks we're cool. I'd happily pay for a PDF too. Awesome. Thanks, Rob. Yeah, we will be selling these at some point soon. They took a hot minute to get done, but we got them done in the long run. Okay, so then we're back to another chorus. Pretty straightforward. This chorus has absolutely nothing different about it. And then we have the breakdown. So we've got a bunch of pre-bended notes. So rather than bending after you play the note, you want to actually bend it before. Right? Rather than, you know, like you might do a, but what we're looking for is a bend before. Like this, right? So in terms of the tab, it's kind of awkward. We spend a bit of time deciding what should be notated and what shouldn't be. And because these bends are pretty fundamental to the riff itself, we decided we wanted to add them in. So one thing that's important about this riff is getting the mutes. So, I mean, obviously once we have that pre-bend idea, so once we're comfortable with bending or asking the left hand to do an action before we strike the note, which can feel a little bit weird when we first start out. Once we're comfortable with that, the thing we want to really focus on is getting those mutes in there where they are, not anywhere we like. because what's going to make this really lock in is making sure that we're playing the dead notes identically. So if Simone and I are playing different dead notes, it's going to sound sloppy, but what we want to try and do is get those dead notes exactly where they are. What tuning is it in? This is in drop A. So it's B standard with a dropped B string down to A. So it's a lot like your drop D equivalent. Will this be available for replay? Yes, it will. It'll be available on Facebook, it'll be available on YouTube, and it will be available on Twitch. And hopefully you guys can all see the links down at the bottom underneath there, so you can go back and check that out when it's up. Should be up like pretty much straight away once the stream is done. It kind of re-uploads. If you don't use the higher strings, is there a reason why you don't use, or why you use a 7 string? Well, I mean, for the most part, we do use all the strings. It just so happens that in this song, a lot of what we do is rhythm. And a lot of our rhythm playing is done on the lower strings. So it is what it is. I like to have the full range because obviously when it comes to our lead playing, we're using most of the upper register of the guitar. So it just so happens that with this song, we're only really using the lower half of the instrument. Okay, so yeah, we want to try and get those dead notes right. Right, that's your first bit there. Now this riff was something that Danny actually wrote. Danny wrote the rhythm of this section and sent it to us. He was kind of playing like a piano left and right hand groove. And I then took this home and sort of like slowly kind of pulled it apart. I wanted to do more than just this like... which was what the original riff was. It was literally just those bends with a couple of mutes in there. And I thought this is like a really good canvas to then throw some extra notes or extra ideas in there. So I guess what I did was I just took some octaves, and just started playing around with different ideas using these notes. A lot of it is that sort of Phrygian flat 2, flat 3 kind of sound. So it's really just about using that mode and coming up with ideas. Ideas that fit within the gaps that we have available to us, or to change a couple of the notes or a couple of the bends here or there. So it shifts between a... God, I'm so bad at thinking about notes. A C minor 7 flat 9 to sort of like, I guess, a C sharp or D flat major 7 kind of sound. Yeah, these are all pre-bends, Justin. So they're kind of cool because they drone. They kind of like, they feel loose and kind of groovy. Whereas when you do a... It's hard to hear the difference. When you're bending after you strike, it kind of has this up and down motion, but with this, it kind of feels like it's scooping and then lowering. I don't know. I must sound like such an idiot right now. So when Danny writes a guitar part, is that on the piano? Yeah, generally. There have been points where Danny has written guitar riffs on the guitar, but he's one of those one-finger guitarists, you know, that does this. Or one string as well. He tends to write riffs on one string, which is kind of funny. But, you know, he's also not a guitarist. So me and Simone take his ideas and kind of turn them into things that function. Sometimes they don't function at all, and we kind of have to rework them to make them make sense. But for the most part, his ideas are actually really awesome, and they translate really, really well to the guitar. This one was really fun to play around with. So the first couple of repeats, we don't really do much that's particularly interesting, but it gets more complicated as it goes. So that's sort of like the first fill that comes up. Right? And that's just an octave slide, kind of like this. Then it gets a little more complicated. So here is the first point where the two parts actually split into two. So the first part I wrote was the top section here. So, oh, actually, sorry, there's one little thing that happens. We go, yeah, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. What there is here is a couple of extra dead notes to fill those spaces. So when there was only, before there was only one dead note here, and now we've decided to add in a couple extra dead notes. Right? It's interesting reading this because, you know, all this stuff is feel-based, not really necessarily tab-based. Right? So what happens there is we do like this octave slide. So this is something that I used to do in my other band Statues quite a bit, and I sort of moved it over to Voyager for a brief moment, which is just to kind of like, just to do a random slide. It doesn't really matter to where, but it's to kind of give the riff a little bit of extra grit. And there's bends just all over the place. All right, now the next part. So that's one part. So here we really just want, we want to let all the notes ring out for their full value. So the tab itself looks really ugly. But when you play it, it's really like anything that you do where you hold out a certain chord or you arpeggiate something, except that you want to try and keep those notes ringing out. So that's my part. Simone's part, I gave her the harder one. Is that. So when I go, she's going. So we get this like big, mushy closed harmony kind of chord, and it sounds nice when it's put together, especially when you have it like panned left and right. It's heavy and kind of pop at the same time. Yeah, that's what we're always going for. We're going for something that's kind of catchy up front, but when you look a little deeper, there's some complexity and stuff there as well. So we've been likened to being pop on top and prog underneath, which I think is kind of cool. Yeah, so you get this like really cool, I mean, I wish I could play both parts at the same time, but I can't. If only Simone were here. When you play them together, you get this big, lush, open kind of chord. And it's all these really nice closed harmony, which is actually like a major 7 chord. And this is one thing I really like about just about theory and stuff is, you know, you can pull all kinds of really creative and colorful sounds out of what are essentially really basic chords. You know, if someone were to say that sounded like a major scale, it really it changes your perspective on it a little bit. So yeah, it's sort of like a major 7, and then that's just sort of adding the 9 in as well. So you get this really nice big open major chord, but because the guitars are separated, it kind of gives it, I don't know, it gives it a bit of separation. It's nice. Anyway, so that's what's happening there, and then right at the end we have this little lick. which we wrote to get us back into the verse. But here the verse has actually changed key. So there's a little trill or a little pull off. And I actually took this from David Maxim Mičić. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his last name right. I'm probably not. I'm probably butchering it. But he does all this really cool, like, these kind of double slides. So I wanted to kind of emulate that a little bit. Which is part of that breakdown as well. Right? Does make it sound much more open after being quite tight and chunky. Yeah, that's kind of the idea. We wanted the riff to kind of hit in unison, and then in those big open chords kind of like open up a bit and then bring it right back into being big and fat again. That's the idea. I'm here in digital form. Hey, Sim. Yeah, so then we've got a second verse. This verse is practically the same as the first one, but yeah, we're just in a different key now. I wish I had actually spent some time thinking about what the key actually is, but I haven't. Sorry about that. So exactly the same deal here. So just all of that same kind of tight palm muting stuff. We're just literally taking the same content that we played in verse 1, but just in a different key. The thing that really brings this part apart from the first verse is really what Ash is doing. Like, Ash's parts are really cool. The first half is sort of this completely separated drum groove that almost isn't related at all to what the guitar is doing, which is kind of sweet. They kind of play off of each other in a really cool way. But then in the second half, Ash starts to do this alternating hats and tom groove, which is wicked. Like, I can remember jamming this with him. It was actually just me and him that were working on this section. And yeah, it kind of locked in this really cool way. And then he started to play my groove, but just in his hands instead of his feet, which made for a really cool kind of change. And then it builds and builds and builds into these big, fat, kind of major 7 chords. So if you were to play that, or if you were to look at that as scale degrees, you've got an octave at the base, and that's sort of like our root note. And then we've got the major 7 on top. So it's dissonant, but it's actually part of the key. So it's what we would call diatonic, where it's the notes are actually part of the key that we're in. Yeah, so I guess this song is in like mostly C Phrygian, which is kind of weird actually. That section sounds like F minor, the guitar bit before returning to the chorus. Yeah, I think it is, yeah. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's F minor. Thank you. Thanks, Zach. He probably knows more about the theory than I do. It depends on how you want to look at it. Like, the key signature says that it would be A flat major, but it's obviously it's not A flat major. It's just it's modal. Okay, and then we play a big fat C chord. Hell yeah. Playing big fat C chords reminds me of learning Devin Townsend tunes when I was a teenager. I think someone in the chat before was like, play more of Truth. That's a big fat C chord at the end of that song. In fact, I think that might be the best C chord ever recorded. I'm willing to say that's the best C major chord ever written. The major 7 sounds quite like Deftones, Foo Fighters. Yeah, Deftones do. I think Deftones use a lot of closed harmony and dissonance in their like chord structures, which is really cool. It's kind of what makes it a little darker. And I've always really liked that sound. I've always really liked the sound of closed harmony, like stuff that's really close together, especially those like major 7 to tonic, if you hear this interval on its own, you're like, ugh, sounds awful. Once you put it in the context of a whole chord, it's quite nice. Matthew Tillman, I assume you're talking about the best C major chord ever recorded, being at the end of Truth by Devin Townsend. Cool. Now, this time around, the chorus actually follows the rhythm of the verse. Right? So, there's no new ideas here. It's just it's expressed in a different way. We've taken the verse rhythm and put it into the chorus instead, and used the chorus chord progression. So this is kind of a cool. This is what we do in Voyager a lot of the time. Is we'll only have a couple of rhythms in a track, but we'll use those rhythms in different ways and reinterpret them or reshape them or recontextualize them. So it's about trying to make all of these ideas that seem separate actually relate to one another in interesting ways. This is a really cool way to not only is it a good way to make your songs make more sense, but it also means you don't have to come up with more ideas. So it's kind of a 2-in-1. The songs make more sense even if you're not aware as a listener that you're taking one riff idea and putting it elsewhere, even if you're not actually physically or consciously aware of it. You will likely process it thinking, oh yeah, that sounds familiar. That sounds recognizable. And it's because we've literally used the same idea. It's just we've kind of given it a new skin in some way. So exact same chorus as always, but now we've just got the verse rhythm instead. And then we go into our disco version of it with Ash going back to the offbeat hi-hats right to the very end. And then we have a breakdown, which is the exact same breakdown that we do in the second half of the first breakdown. So it's pretty much the same stuff. I think the only difference is as instead of both of us going, one guitar is going, a dank, dirty minor 9 sort of sound, like a flat 9, that is. But apart from that whole breakdown is exactly the same as what we had looked at before. Right at the very end of the tune, we have a little figure that goes. So Simone does the whole riff in the upper octave, like that, with those little those little pull-offs. And I go down into the lower octave in the second half. So that way together you get this octave, but it's also panned left and right, so you get a little bit more of that separation, which is pretty cool. And that, my friends, is colors. There's really like 3 ideas in this song, and it's just a matter of recontextualizing them. You've got the chorus idea, you've got the verse rhythm, and you've got the bridge or the breakdown. That's really all there is in this song. It's actually quite a straightforward one. But yeah, a few things for the guitarists is to really focus on tightening your right hand and moving that wrist up a little further than where you would normally have it, and being careful with the left hand in terms of trying to lift your finger off the fret whenever you can to get that mute nice and tight. And pre-bends. Practice those pre-bends. So get used to the feeling of giving your left hand an action before your right, because usually we're always thinking about everything being in line. So we're thinking about all our notes and our fingers being in sync. Whereas this is kind of like more like using a pedal, like an expression pedal on the piano, where your foot has to react before your hands do. So your left hand has to respond to the note prior to the note being struck, if that makes sense. which can be a little bit confusing. But just take it slowly. Like, this stuff is, it sounds complicated, but it really isn't. It's just a matter of taking it slowly and really getting your rhythms nice and tight. It does make it sound much more full and lush with the two guitars. Yeah, definitely. It's really fun having access to two guitars, because you can, rather than having everyone play the exact same chord, like this major 7, you can express that in so many different ways. You can take any notes of that scale, that major scale, and try and combine them into a chord. And being able to have two guitars to kind of separate the chord up and break it up into two parts is really cool. Like here, I don't have access to the 9. So I'm playing 1, the root note, the 1, the 3rd, the major 7, and then the root note at the top. Right? So that's just 1, 3, and 7. But I really love the sound of the 9. Sorry. This note here. But there's no way I can get a hold of it in this position with these notes. Right? The note is here, but I can't get to it, because I'm already playing something else. That's one of the annoying things about guitar, and the great thing about piano, where you can actually just, like, you've got 10 digits. You can play 10 notes at once. It's really cool. Guitar, you only can play as many notes as you have strings. So you have all these really annoying restrictions creatively. So that's where having two guitars is great, because you can have someone else move somewhere else on the fretboard, and it gives you access to notes that you might not have as the only guitar player. Not related to colours, but was the video for Water Over the Bridge as fun to make as it was to watch? Yeah, it was actually hilarious. We there were multiple points where we got kind of told to move on. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. I nearly fell off that little electric box that I'm standing on just before the breakdown. And oh man, there was just, yeah, it was just shenanigans the whole time. There was a lot of driving around and stuffing around, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. What was the inspiration behind the colourful theme for the album? Actually, it was Simone was really big on the visuals on this record. Like, she just imagined, especially this track, just being like a swirl of colours. And I was kind of feeling the same thing. It kind of felt like this. It just felt kind of synth wavy, I guess. And all the colours that are associated with that are like the neon pinks and purples and yellows and greens and stuff like that. And I think, I don't know, sometimes you just listen to something and it gives you an image. Like, I get that a lot with Devin Townsend's music, and I think that's what drew me to his stuff so much, was the fact that, at least with his earlier stuff, I'm more a fan of. Every record had its own kind of color scheme. Like, Ocean Machine is obviously very blue, and like you for me at least, I just got immediate images of being on an open ocean or whatever. And then Infinity is like a brilliant white light and all this kind of stuff. So sometimes you get these like visual elements with music, not necessarily synesthesia, but like, I don't know, it just hits you, it gives you mental imagery and stuff. So yeah, Devin says he hears in colours. Yeah, I mean, that doesn't surprise me at all, because the music that he writes really elicits, at least in me, and I know in a lot of other people, that same kind of sensation. So yeah, Voyager is, or at least this record, Colours in the Sun, is very similar to that. I think it's a broad palette of colours too. Like, to me, this track is like a multicolored rainbow, like bright lights and like a rave. But then Sever Romance is like grey and black and blue and yeah, almost mostly black, actually, for me. But I guess that's kind of what's cool about the record, is I think there's quite a palette there. And we will cover every single tune on this album. I have the exact same thing. I always imagine a color and a thing depending on the song. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. In my opinion, reflects all your albums also. Oh, so like everything has that kind of color to it. That's cool. Um, yeah, I mean, it's. I guess it depends on the kind of music that you're attracted to. Um, I've always really loved music that could elicit like a scene. Like another one of my favorite bands is the Deer Hunter, and Casey has this incredible. He's just a compositional genius, as far as I'm concerned. He can just perfectly illustrate a feeling or a sensation or a mood or a scene with the way that he creates music, and it's really inspiring. Like he gives me songwriters envy so bad. Any guy that has the power to elicit a visual response from a listener is just so powerful. Yeah, I agree, Jan. Definitely. Yeah, it's a cool skill to have. I mean, it's also like to demystify it a little bit. I think uh, you can learn what kinds of chords and what kinds of modes and scales can elicit a certain mood. Like a minor seven has a certain kind of emotion to it. Everyone feels it differently, but I think the reason why music hits people in a certain way is because of these things, these constants. That it's not actually as mysterious as it seems. That there's a reason why you feel a certain way when you hear a certain chord. When you hear a dissonance like this, there's a reason you hear that and go, "Oh God!" But just adding that third note in, suddenly it's turned this into something that has a bit more context. So that kind of stuff really fascinates me anyway, but that probably makes me sound like a total geek. Did you already cover the bendy note bit? Just tuning in. Sorry. Hey, Chris. Yeah. I've pretty much run through the whole tune. But just so you know, all of these videos will be up online for ages, probably permanently. So if you ever want to come back to them, they'll be available on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitch. So don't feel like you missed out entirely. All of this stuff will be up for viewing later. Okay, now I know it was destiny for me to find your band, the Deer Hunter Act 2. Hey, John. Yeah, Deer Hunter Act 2. Oh, man. Yeah, I can't give that album enough praise. It's just a masterpiece. It's so good. I mean, like, if I want to be completely honest, I wish the album was mixed to the same quality as Act 3. But the music is so good that to me, it doesn't matter at all. Like the compositional stylings of that record are just amazing and so diverse. Like Smiling Swine is just such a banger, and then you've got like The Lake and the River, which is like super proggy, Delphi Express, where it's like country-esque. If you guys haven't checked out the Deer Hunter, please do it. The band is amazing. I get feelings rather than colors. It feels a very open album, an uplifting album. Other albums I listen to feel like a hug. Things I dislike makes me feel uncomfortable, and the hairs on my head. Yeah, it's interesting. Like when you notice something that doesn't gel with you as well, it's a very different feeling. I'm glad you find the record uplifting. That's really good. That's kind of what we're aiming for. We're aiming for something that was uplifting and a little bit on the cynical side, I guess, as well. We can't ever really avoid that, but we wanted this one to feel a little bit like happier and more upbeat. Other albums I listen to feel like a hug. The record that does that for me is Michelle Nadigiacello's Comfort Woman album. She's this fantastic bass player, songwriter, singer, and her album Comfort Woman, yeah, it is exactly as the album title suggests. It is just like this beautiful woman telling you that everything is okay. It's like the best feeling ever. It's really nice. It's really relaxing. It's a great album. I find D minor the most depressing of all the keys. Yeah, I've see that to me the whole different root note key thing has never really struck me as something that I've cared about. The only time I ever really care about something like that is if the harmony on a certain chord clashes too much because it's too low in pitch. Like there, if you were to play um, in A rather than in D, and you're playing A above D, then all the chords are going to sound higher in pitch. But the only reason I would ever care about that is if the chords when in the key of D are too low and too closed for us to be able to kind of comprehend them, if you know what I mean. It's like when you go too low, you can't use major thirds in a chord when they're too low because otherwise it sounds messy. It's like that. That's the only time I've ever really cared about like key. But to each their own. I mean, that's kind of the beauty of music, right? Thanks for this beautiful insights and a ton of greetings from Germany. Oh, a ton of greetings. I love a ton of greetings. Thanks, mate. Will you guys come back to the darker stuff for the next album? We don't know. It just whatever comes out comes out. Like we really don't force anything in Voyager. It tends to just happen, and then because we're in a certain frame of mind at a certain point in time, a lot of the music we create is similarly colored or similarly tinted, I guess, because we're sort of in a similar mindset. We're not necessarily in control of what that mindset is, and what it does as a result of creating music. I might be in a great mindset, but the music I write is really dark and depressing. I don't know. It's it's a bit of a mystery, really. Scott hasn't seen Spinal Tap. Yeah, yep, I haven't. Sorry. When you upload this to places, could you please recap? Oh no. Oh, the annoying thing is I can't get to the comments anywhere else other than this feed. So I'm sorry. I put your album on when I go for a run. It's a pick me up after a slump day. The layers on the album are focal. It hasn't left my most listened to list on Spotify since it landed last year. That's awesome. Thank you so much. I'm glad that the record is a pick me up. That's really good. That's exactly what I want to hear. I do like the old type of negative influences in the earlier albums. Yeah, definitely. That stuff will always be present in some way, shape, or form. I think. Um, Danny is a massive typo fan, so there will always be that sort of dark shade in there to some degree. Have you guys heard anything about Radar Fest yet? We haven't heard anything confirmed at this stage, but yeah, do keep your ears and eyes on the socials for all of that. There might be an update soon. I'm not entirely sure. Um, as far as I know, I think it's being delayed, but like, yeah, I mean, it's a mystery. Man, I wish I could stay longer loving the stream. I look forward to catching up. Thanks, man. Thanks for dropping in. And can you come to Bergen, Norway? We'd love to have you. We'd love to be in Norway. Leprous are some of our favourite people, and we would love to get to Norway just to hang out with them. But playing a gig there would also be really cool. Who are some of my influences? Devin Townsend was probably the biggest influence on me in terms of just music in general. He wrote the music that I always wanted to hear. It was a really weird experience that I had as a teenager. I came home from school and my brother, who's 5 years older than me, was like listening to a metal album, and I just heard this music and was like, oh my god, what's this? And he showed me the album cover, and it was Accelerated Evolution, and it was the song that was playing was Deadhead, and I was like, this is the exact music I've been looking for. Something that's like heavy and epic and melodic and crushing and beautiful and melancholic, and it had like everything in the one song. So needless to say, he became one of my biggest influences. So I learnt a bunch of his stuff on guitar and learnt how he played guitar. He does that really like that real dig in, aggressive kind of palm mute thing, and I love that. So a lot of my tones are kind of heavily influenced by Devon. October Rust was a pinnacle album. Yeah, I'll be honest, I haven't listened to it beginning to end, but I've listened to a fair amount of their singles and stuff like that, and it's all really good stuff. I remember hearing Everything Dies when I was like really young, and I didn't get it at the time. But once I grew up and, you know, lived a bit more life, it made a ton more sense to me. You have a Tour Legends playlist on Spotify with people asking about influences. Would it be worth doing a playlist on there of the bands you all love? Yeah, definitely. That's a great idea. We'll definitely do that. What about some tours? You guys have though about incoming events, Europe speaking. How is your planning? Yeah, we're honestly at this stage we're not trying to plan anything. It's all really up in the air and confusing at this point. So we don't want to commit to something and then have to cancel it again. You know what I mean? Like we don't want to disappoint you guys twice. So yeah, at this point it's much too early. And I mean, obviously with all of these international flights being cut off, no one can even get to Australia and we can't leave the country. So we don't know how long that's going to be, but hopefully it will be. Hopefully it will be sooner that those border closures are reopened rather than later. Thanks, man. That was fun. Technically supposed to be working, but but may have been playing along with you a little bit. That's that's awesome. I won't dob you in, I swear. Love to see you over the ditch into New Zealand. Yeah, I'd love to get back to New Zealand. New Zealand is actually one of my favorite places in the world. I've been there like I think 4 or 5 times now, and it's the most beautiful place on earth as far as I'm concerned. So hopefully we can get back there soon. A proper South American tour as well. Yes. Yep, that's also incredibly high on our list. We did get to go to Mexico City, 2 years ago? September, October-ish, in 2018, and that was awesome. So yeah, we'll be back. We'll be back once all of these closures are sorted and everything kind of goes back to some semblance of normalcy. Hopefully, we'll be able to get back over there soon. All right, I think we might leave it there. But if you want to check out more of what we do, you can go to our Facebook page, Voyager Australia. You can go to our YouTube under the same name. You can check out our Instagram at VoyagerAU. If you want to pick up any merch or physicals, the best place to buy it is at our Bandcamp, which is voyager.bandcamp.com. That is how we make the most money back on sales. So if you do want to purchase anything from us, we greatly appreciate it. Bandcamp is the best place to go. So yeah, there's all of our records up there. There's vinyl, which looks a little something like this. It's very beautiful. There's a track listing on the back. It's a beautiful orange color, or transparent orange for anyone who wants to pick up a copy. We've got a couple of those left in stock. Yeah, thank you so much for tuning in, everybody, and hopefully you guys come back next week. We'll be doing this every single week at 8 p.m. So take care, everyone. Have a good one.